I have a profitable betting system. I used it recently to place bets of over £1 million on a variety of different sports. And that goes against the grain of what most people think about sports betting. Because when you talk about sports betting, people will say, even if you can find a system that is profitable, no sooner will you place a bet than you will be closed down, restricted, limited, banned, all of those sort of things. However, I'm still here. I am not banned. And that is because of the way that I do it and what I do. And what we're going to explore in this video is why it's perfectly possible to place bets worth millions of pounds without being restricted at all, even if you're very profitable. And if you want to find out how that is done and how I do it, then watch the rest of this video. I've been successfully betting and trading for over 2 decades. If you want more videos like this and you want me to describe more of what I do, then give us a like. If you want to talk to like-minded people, visit the BetAngel forum where you can do exactly that, but also visit our website where you can download a free trial of BetAngel. So the betting industry has a massive image problem. And that problem comes around because it's effectively an industry that is funded by losses, typically your losses. If you place a bet, then the odds that you tend to get will be, they're not representative of the true odds of something happening. And the difference between the two is the money that the bookmaker, the sportsbook or the casino will make. Effectively, the whole industry is underwritten by losses, and that's why it has such a bad reputation. But even then, the reputation gets much worse, because if you do somehow find a winning betting system, then you immediately encounter another problem.
But the general consensus with punters at the moment is if you win, you will be closed down, and closed down very quickly in some cases.
So why do we see so many stories and articles about people being banned, limited, restricted, how bad the bookmakers are, and how if only I'd been able to place this bet, I would have won a fortune, but I was, all of this sort of stuff? Well, the fact is that all media, mainstream and social media, feeds off of this sort of sense of injustice and rage and fear. And, you can't have a weather forecast. It's got to be, a monsoon to hit the UK, and you can't have anything without it being sensationalized nowadays. That's just a fact of the way that the world works. I tend not to read or watch the news simply because that's all that you get nowadays. It's people sort of saying, oh my God, this is going to happen. This is a disaster. Oh, and all they're trying to do is to try and get you to engage in some way. That's how they make their money. Influencers, the main media, social media, newspapers, TV, news channels, that is what they're doing. They're not there to inform you, they're there to grab your attention. So the fact is there's a massive difference between something that happens within the world and the actual reality. And if you can detach yourself from that, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to benefit from that and not fall for that trap of getting involved and looking at sensationalistic content. So that's the first reason that you see this is such a prevalent factor, is it's a much, much bigger problem in the media than it is in reality, as I will show you in a second. But also we do have to look really at the business of betting, because that will tell you exactly why some people do actually get restricted and banned. So when you look at the betting industry does actually want you to win. What they don't want you to win is to have an edge over them in the long term. So every bet that you place with a bookmaker, a sportsbook or a casino will have a theoretical edge built in. So whenever you bet, that theoretical edge will play out, but it will definitely play out in the longer term. Short term you'll win, sometimes you'll lose, but that theoretical edge is always there, and the longer that you play, the more chance you have of going bust. That's the way that the industry works. It's not an intellectual challenge between you and the sportsbook, bookmaker or casino. It's a transaction. They are an entertainment business. They're going to charge you for that entertainment. And the way that they charge you is through this theoretical edge. So the longer you play, the more likely you are to lose. So it's wrong to indicate that they don't want you to win, because they do want you to win. Perhaps not just too often and in such a way that you're able to overcome that edge. The best way to understand how that theoretical edge works is to go into a casino and have a look at a roulette table. So if you want to understand how the betting industry wins from you in the long term, but how it's okay for you to win in the short term, then the best place to go is to a casino, because it will be laid out beautifully for you right there. Head on over to the roulette table and you will get a neat explanation as to where house edge exists in any particular market. When we look at the roulette table, we can see 36 numbers. We can bet on any one of those numbers. We could bet on quadrants or thirds where the ball's going to land, but we could also bet on red or black. So if you just want to have the simplest bet, you could bet on red or black, and if the ball lands on a red or black number, then you win. Couldn't be simpler. So where do the casinos make their money? Well, if you look at a roulette wheel, a European wheel will have a 0 on it, and typically an American wheel will have a double 0. But basically, if the ball lands in there, then the casino will take all of your money. However, you could actually bet on those numbers as well, but the casino will only ever pay out to 1 in 36, despite the fact that there are 37 or 38 numbers on the wheel. So that is their theoretical edge in that particular game. The more you play it, the more that edge will begin to come out. I once played in a casino where a guy stuck his last $25 on 0 and it came up 4 times in a row, at which point they closed the table. They do have some methods in place to restrict your ability to be able to sort of bend the rules slightly. So they will always have house limits and they will have minimum bet limits. That forces you to bet a certain amount and stops you going over a certain amount on the table as well. That's one way that they limit your ability to win. But could you ever get banned from playing a roulette table at a casino? Well, the interesting thing is people have, and this brings us on to the fact as to why people do get limited or banned in a variety of different betting markets. So my introduction to the betting industry came about because of a book called Beat the Dealer by Ed Thorpe. If you're not familiar with this book, basically it teaches you how to win at a casino when you're playing blackjack. It overcomes that house edge. If you've never read any of Ed Thorpe's stuff, then just go out and read everything that he's ever produced, because it's always very interesting and you will learn something from it. But yeah, I followed in his footsteps and I paid homage to Ed Thorpe by card counting at the same casinos that he did as well. It was just one of those funny things that I wanted to do. But fundamentally speaking, you would play a basic strategy and then he would know, if you use this very simple system, if the remaining deck was in your favour or against you, and he would raise and lower stakes, and that gave him a positive expectancy. That allowed him to overcome the casino's house edge. But the problem is, if you overcome a house edge, then you could potentially bankrupt the casino or a bookmaker or a sportsbook. So they don't want you to do that. And if they think that you're up to something a bit unusual, they will necessarily restrict you in some way or ban you. And that's what happened to Ed Thorpe. It wasn't long before casinos began to realise that there was some guy going around that was winning a lot of money. So they have lots of stuff going on behind the scenes to basically identify if there's any funny business going on. They used to share photos or video footage in the old days, but nowadays when you walk into a casino, they've actually got facial recognition technology that will be able to identify if you visit other casinos or if you're identified as a certain type of player. And it's pretty much the same when you look at the sports betting industry. They profile players, they identify players that they don't want. And if you're sort of bending the rules slightly or you're finding a way around that house edge, then ultimately you could bankrupt them and they don't want you as a customer. That's the reason that people tend to get restricted or limited. If you're a conventional player and you lose money over a long period of time, that's not really a problem. But obviously they've got a massive problem if you could potentially bankrupt them. And using up special offers and arbing and doing all of these sort of things could get you into the position where they don't want you as a particular customer. However, I've been betting for a long period of time. I do have an edge and I am not restricted. So let's explore why that's the case. So if you're going to make money sports betting, you need to overcome the house edge. What sort of house edge do we have when we're betting on sports typically? Most bookmakers, sportsbook and casinos will price their market at maybe 120, 150. They will price it with a lot of margin, a big house edge in those particular prices. And you're thinking, well, what are you talking about? What are these percentages that you've got here? Well, it's perfectly possible to convert odds into a percentage and then represent that as a percentage chance of that particular event occurring. If you add all of those up, you will get a number somewhere above 100%. And that basically tells you how big the house edge is. Where can you find this information? You can't. They will not publish it. Apart from there is one place where you can bet where that is actually published, and that is a betting exchange. Because on a betting exchange, the whole market is created by people betting for or against individual events. It actually is an intellectual challenge between one person on one side of the book and the person on the other. If I'm better than you, I will make money. If you are better than me, you will make money. And the way that the exchange works is they charge a commission on winning bets. So there is no house edge to defend. They don't need to restrict or limit you. It's just an intellectual battle between people who want to place bets on the exchange. You can offer bets to the market. You can offer as much money or take as much money as you wish, and there are no restrictions on the way that you bet. It is purely a battle of skill. The way that the exchange makes their money is they actually charge a commission on winning bets. So there's no need for them to restrict you whatsoever. So what has actually happened over a long period of time is the amount of money that gets lost to the other side of the book is whittled down until it's very, very close to 100%. And as a consequence, if you have a little bit of skill, if you're a little bit better than chance at being able to predict something, pick off a decent position within the market, do anything that's better than random, then you've got a fair chance of winning in the longer term. Now, you do have to pay commission and other things like that. So really, fundamentally speaking, if you bet into a betting exchange completely at random, you're more or less break even minus that commission. That is the tiny, tiny, tiny house edge that you have to overcome in order to be profitable in the longer term. But better than that, even if you do win in the longer term, there's absolutely no reason to restrict or ban you. So at the beginning of the video, you can see how I staked over £1 million on a variety of different types of sports bets. How was that possible? How is it even possible? Well, I've got something to reveal about that number in a couple of minutes. But fundamentally speaking, when we look at that large number, you'll be thinking, well, there's no way that I can afford to do that because I simply don't have the money. Well, neither did I, because the way that I did it was actually bet it over a large number of markets. So I basically had a small stake and a reasonable bank, and then I just repeated that process over a large number of markets. So you could say, for example, we look at horse racing, there's a race every 10 minutes. You could actually put £1,000 in one market. You'll know the result fairly quickly. You could put it in another and another and another and another and another. If you managed to do 1,000 events with £1,000, you would achieve that £1 million worth of turnover. And the great thing about modern betting markets and exchanges is you can plug in bits of software like BetAngel that will do that automatically for you. So you can do it manually, you can look at a market, you can make a decision about whether you want to bet or not, or you can completely automate the process, get it to look for specific odds at specific times when the house edge is at its absolute minimum. And that is essentially what I do. That's the trick to getting those large numbers. It isn't having a large amount of money in the first place. It's just using a relatively decent stake with a semi-decent bank and then repeating that process endlessly over a long period of time. Even if you have a tiny stake and a tiny bank, you could achieve some quite spectacular numbers as well. But of course, you should only do that if you know that you've got an edge. But of course, the advantage with the betting exchange is you won't be limited or restricted. The house edge is very small. And also, the worst result that you can get over a long period of time, if you're doing stuff at random, is break even minus commission. But achieving those bigger numbers is perfectly possible. And the interesting thing about that number is that isn't over the lifetime of my account. It isn't over the last year. It isn't over the last month even. I actually managed to bet over £1 million in the last week. So long-term profitable sports betting is perfectly possible. But you have to use a betting exchange. If you use a traditional sportsbook, bookmaker or casino, their house edge is so big and they have to protect it so they don't go bankrupt. So they will restrict and limit you in a number of ways to stop you from doing that. But on a betting exchange, you do not have that problem. You can actually put large amounts of money through and there are no restrictions of any sort. And better than that, because they don't have that typical house edge, the amount of money that you lose to the other side of the book is absolutely tiny. So that's all that you need to do to overcome and become profitable. And then it's just a question of, how bigger stakes can you use? So why do we not hear about this? Well, I've written to radio shows and magazines, and I've tried to appear on TV debates and stuff like that, but I never ever get coverage. Well, I say never ever, I do now and again, but it's very rare. And that is fundamentally for two reasons. People love to post sensationalistic content, and basically saying here's a way to actually do something useful isn't as attention grabbing as some of the other stories that you see. But also the industry from front to back is funded by bookmakers, sportsbook and casinos. They need that big fat margin to generate advertising money, which they can then give to all of these interested parties. and therefore they don't want people like me on there telling you exactly what to do and how to do it. It just doesn't fit the narrative, and it doesn't fit their business model. Because even if you look at it from the worst case scenario, you will lose much slower on an exchange than you would lose with a traditional sportsbook, bookmaker or casino. So yeah, it doesn't particularly suit their objective. And, you know, one of the things I like to point out is this video is not monetized. I'm not going to get any commission from anybody from doing this video. I'll get no commission from Betfair at all this year, you know, affiliate or any other way to promote exchanges. The reason that I'm doing it is because it's such a good opportunity. I see so much information out there. I see so much sensationalized content that it just incredibly frustrates me. There's a great opportunity. It's been there for a number of years, and people like me and others, other BetAngel users, are taking advantage of those opportunities. But we really find it very difficult to break through all of that money that is basically trying to stop that message from getting out there. And that's the primary motivation for me doing this video. It's a wonderful opportunity. It answers all of those problems that most people tend to have. And if you've got a legitimate betting strategy that doesn't sort of twist or warp the system some way or exploit something, then there's no reason why you can't deploy it successfully if you use a betting exchange. So yeah, lots of content in there, but I hope I've got that message across, and I hope that that video has been useful for you.